Hey guys, you're now tuned in to the Self Awareness Podcast with your host Summer B. It's good to be here. It's been a few weeks since I last released an episode. I have been just busy traveling and working and reading and stuff like that. But doing this podcast is where I can really tap into my passion. So it's good to be back. And while I've been on break, I've been really trying to plan out how I should continue to advance this podcast. And I decided, I think it's time to get to the nitty gritty stuff. I think it's really time to get into really seeing how having mental distress can affect a person and how it actually manifests. So yeah, that's where we're going to dig deep into today. And I'm actually going to be speaking on something that I dealt with myself, so I can give a lot of insight on this. And then also I might do a part 2 to this just because it's just so powerful and it's so common. But we're going to be talking about anxiety today. And if you didn't see my last video, I kind of just still in the process of getting this YouTuber thing figured out. So I kind of just you basically see me record my podcast, and but you guys get to see how it goes and me talking off my head and stuff. I have my notes right here, so if I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at my notes, because I have a lot of good sources for this. And really hope you can share this with somebody that you think will benefit from listening to this, or you can just learn more about people who struggle with anxiety, because it's a real true thing. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with this episode. Just give me 1 second, guys. It's right here. Like I said, I have a lot of good notes on here, so I just want to make sure I can see it. I have on my glasses this episode because I'm making sure I'm seeing every single thing. Alrighty. Hello. Today I want to focus on understanding anxiety and learning ways to overcome anxious thoughts. So we're going to start off with this quote. "There is no greater illusion than fear," by Lao Tzu. I'm also going to start off by asking you 3 questions. Do you operate in faith or in fear? What is the situation where you're either nervous or afraid to do something, but you end up overcoming it? And question 3, do you try to control things that you do not have any control over? So as those questions marinate in your mind, I'm going to also define anxiety and also worry. Anxiety is a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, and it's typically about an event or something with an uncertain outcome. And then worry, I actually reading this book called The 12 Universal Laws of Success by Dr. Herbert Harris. And I really, really, really liked how the author defined worry. So according to the author, Dr. Herbert Harris, worry affects the circulation of the heart, the glands, the nervous system, and most people die from worry than overwork. So just really being in that constant state of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And I think it's normal for everybody to have some type of fear, have some type of nervousness, have some type of worry about something. But it's when you consistently have worries and fears about everything you do, and it's causing you distress, it's causing you dysfunction, and it's like you can't operate at a balanced level. So that's the purpose of this episode, is to really figure out what exactly is anxiety, how can we overcome it if we're going through that right now, or what can we tell our friends or our family members when we see them being anxious about something. So according to Dr. Herbert Harris, to eliminate worry, you must change your attitude towards its cause. So if you're being fearful about something, he's basically saying you gotta change your perspective from what you're being fearful of. And I want to add on to it. I think it's just not about our attitude. I also think it's about changing our attitude, changing our perspectives, changing our thoughts, and changing our feelings to whatever is causing that worry. And this takes a lot of mental hoops, because especially if you're so used to your default being worry, your subconscious mind is so used to you worrying, it's going to take some practice to get used to, okay, how can I have a positive attitude about this? What's another lens I can look at this situation so I won't be fearful of it? What are some thoughts that I can tell myself? What are some feelings I can actually feel in this current moment to help me process through whatever is making me afraid? It's really about understanding who you are and what's going on so you can really start getting to the root of things. And you also might ask yourself, so when I do have a lot of constant anxiety about things, it can even be about random things. Where does anxiety actually come from? What is the origin as you're trying to get to the root to why it's planted in your subconscious mind? And there's a lot of numerous explanations to why people go through anxiety, but here I have some general different theories about why people struggle with anxiety and how it manifests over time. So number one, it's all about the society and the culture you're raised in. If you're raised in a certain society that, feeds a lot of fear to you, you're going to start getting used to that, or even just the culture that you grew up in. So that's step one to really understanding where does your anxiety come from, which is really analyzing what social factors play a part in you being influenced by it, and if that's contributing to you having fearful thoughts. And then next, we're looking at to your childhood and how some early life stressors or traumatic events, or really just modeling your parents in childhood. As kids, our parents might say one thing, but we typically do what they do. So if you're seeing your parent anxious, you might start to develop those habits as well, and you really just don't know it. You're just a kid. So, but it's important to be aware of it to really figure out, okay, did this is this where it came from for me? And then also another huge reason why people have anxiety is because they didn't know that sometimes as they were growing up as a kid, they were being denied consistently of their true needs, thoughts, and emotions. Like their parents weren't meeting the needs that the child needed at the time, just due to maybe their parents to meet their needs. So they didn't know how to do that to their child. But this also can lead for some people to develop having anxiety about certain things. So, and also the key center of anxiety is about thinking, and it's really about maladaptive thinking, which is also can be defined as thinking negatively, thinking fearfully, and really just having these overgeneralized thoughts, overthinking situations, and also overanalyzing situations. And I'll give you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about when it comes to overgeneralizing something. And then, so for example, to overgeneralize, you're basically saying one statement that fits the whole scenario, which is completely like extreme and not true. And it's basically saying like it's a disaster if this doesn't work out. Like I'm just not going to be happy. Like it's just thinking like that consistently, or even just overthinking, like just repeating what's happened in the past and thinking of like, did I say that right? Did I do that right? Did this come out right? What did they think of me like that can cause you your own form of anxiety, just because worrying about what just happened, even though you can't control what just happened. Then also just and that's also ties into overanalyzing and just overanalyzing what little things people do, and seeing and just kind of like freaking out about what they did. So there's different ways anxiety plays a part, but thinking in these extremes leads to you consistently building these anxious thoughts over time. So as we continue, there's two theories and one phenomenon I want to focus on when it comes to also understanding anxiety and really how anxiety disorders are manifested. So first we have the metacognitive theory, which basically explains how worrying is experienced as distressing. So the person recognizes, oh, this is distressing me, but they also feel it as essential to survive. Um, so that's the metacognitive theory. Then you also have the avoidance theory. Sometimes people think they're so like they were anxious about something, so they avoid it, and for temporary, it causes them, a release of like a release of like, oh, I don't have to worry about it, but then it actually continues to build up over time when you just continuously avoid things and don't face them head on. And then another phenomenon is the intolerance of uncertainty and how worry is maintained by the impossibility of finding a way to control uncertain situations. So this person is basically trying to control something, but it's impossible to control it. We've talked about this in my podcast before, but we can only control ourselves, our emotions, our feelings, the way how we react to things, not how other people do that. So, and I say this all to say, like, I think back on this, and I used to think, I used to really overthink, overanalyze, have constant worry thoughts, and but there's also a point where I didn't even know I was worrying. I didn't even know I was fearful about it. It wasn't until like I started to become more of aware of my patterns that I really started to really figure out, like, oh wow, I'm having anxiety all the time. And this is just a personal experience, but last year, last year, 2021, my anxiety peaked really bad, really bad. I was even to the point where I was contemplating getting on anxiety medication. And and I really just felt hopeless because I really couldn't control my thoughts. I had extreme fearful and worried thoughts all the freaking time. And it even sucks when you're trying to go to sleep and you just have rushing thoughts repeatedly every time that you're trying to go to sleep. So in one last happenstance with me trying to not get on the meds, I told myself, okay, where are these thoughts coming from? Why do I think the way I think? Why am I having these fearful thoughts? What am I truly afraid of? Why am I trying to control this? Why am I trying to control that? And going through that rabbit hole, I really figured out the root of my anxiety. And I really figured out, like, oh, it comes from this. It comes from me doing this and me feeding this. And once I was aware of the root, I started, overcoming it by having a positive attitude, looking at things from different perspective, trying not to control things I can't control, operating in faith and not fear. And I started feeding that part of myself more. And until now, over time, sometimes I worry about things. Anything that you do is new can make you uncomfortable, but it's not to the point where it's causing me distress anymore. So I just give all glory to God because of that. And if you're currently going through anxiety and having these thoughts, intrusive thoughts, like thoughts you just can't control, that you want to stop, I'm really hoping that what I'm talking about next will help you start to figure out ways you can overcome the anxiety that you face. And number one to overcome anxiety is understanding that you have power. You have power within your will to overcome it. And if you just tell yourself, I will overcome these thoughts, I will overcome my anxiety, you're going to do it. And continuously tell yourself that. Feed that into your subconscious mind, because it's extremely powerful. So with that being said, when it comes to overcoming anxiety, you have a choice. Are you going to operate in faith or fear? It's really like choose your hard. Operating in fear is hard. Operating in faith is also hard. But when you operate in faith, it makes things a lot more smoother to know that you're going to be okay no matter what the outcome is, because you have enough faith that everything's going to work out. And walking in that more is extremely powerful. So you gotta start building that pattern with everything that you do, that everything will work out for your good, and just continue to feed that part of yourself, feed that part of your mind, your subconscious mind. But step one to recognizing it, like I said, is having a choice, and also being aware of your thoughts and accepting it and dealing with it, and understanding that we can't change what we don't acknowledge. So if you continue, saying, "Oh, I have anxiety. Oh, these thoughts are normal," then there's not going to be any willpower to willing to change. And when it comes to changing, you also want to have the desire to change. I wanted to change my anxiety because I didn't want to pass it on. My anxiousness, I didn't want to pass it on to the future generations, and I also didn't want to pass it on because I'm stepping into the mental health field. And if I'm anxious, then my patient's anxious. Like, that's the whole mess. And then I also didn't want to also just couldn't handle it anymore. Because I think I can't really pinpoint where my anxiety started, but I'm pretty sure like in high school. Like I know for sure I had it in high school. So yeah, I just, at that point, it's like I really had the power to want to change, and the desire to want to change really was leading me strong to like wanting to stay the same, because I knew something had to switch. So step one, acknowledge it, accept it, and just say, hey, it is what it is, but I have the desire to change. And changing my thinking also forced me to believe in myself more. Like I really, within changing my thinking, that's when my faith started tapping in. Because a lot of, fear is really just, and worry is really just trying to control the outcome, control things that you have no control over. You're thinking of the worst possible outcome. But if you change your thinking to, whatever happens, I know God's got me. Whatever happens, I know everything's going to be okay. And if you start looking at things from that perspective, it will help you not to be so fearful of things that you can't control, because we only can control ourselves. And also with me being able to change my thinking, I also dealt with self-doubt. So within the self-doubt, I think that's where some fear aligned. But when I started to believe in myself more, when I started having faith more, when I started changing my thinking, all those habits really just started to lessen and lessen until it didn't really exist anymore. And then next step, you have to also understand that what you truly worry about and what you're fearful about, like the quote said in the beginning, is really just an illusion. Like, it's really not real. It's just a thought. Like, it's really just a thought. Like, oh yeah, that could happen, but what's the chances of that really happening? What's the chances of that really coming true? Like, is this and then it's like you feed that thought, and then you harbor on that thought. Then you try to not think about that thought. That's also some type of anxiety I dealt with. Like, I would have a negative thought, and then I try to think positive about it, then the negative about it, then the positive about it. But I'm just in my head, just like a loose cannon, like going back and forth. But I had to start realizing that I had to really have, like I said, a perspective, not only just changing positive, changing negative to positive, but actually changing the perspective, believing in it, having feelings towards it. That really helped, like, cement it in stone for me to build the habit of operating in faith and fear. And also understanding to give yourself grace. And if you are like really dealing with a lot of anxiety, just try to take it one day at a time. Like, just try to win each day at a time, 1% better each day. And I'm telling you, within months, you're probably just gonna look back and say, wow, I'm just really not thinking like that anymore. Like, I've really grown from that. And like over time, changing what you do daily, changing the small habits that you do daily will lead to huge habitual results in the long run. And then you can continue building on top of that, continue building on top of that, continue building on top of that. And that's really what life is. It's just a constant, you're basically just building who you are and understanding who you are. And in order to build, you have to have a stable foundation. But if your foundation is weak due to you having, fearful thoughts, and, your brain and is not being in the right place, it's going to be hard to continue to build on top of it, because you're always going to have that one aspect of the foundation that's not strong enough. So focus on just repairing your foundation so you can build and become the best version of you. And I also want to say from my personal experience that my relationship with God has helped me, led me out of fear. And even like now when I have worried thoughts or thoughts of something I can't control, I automatically relax myself by telling myself this. It's 2 Timothy chapter 1. I think it was verse 6. I forgot to write this down. But it says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but the power of love and a sound mind." And so whenever I start getting scared about something, I tell myself, God does not give me a spirit of fear. I even was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago. They said they were afraid about something, and I told them, well, God doesn't give you a spirit of fear. And so if you know that whatever you're going through that's hurting you, and the fear doesn't come from God, the person that created you, the person that loves you, you start to not validate that anymore. You start to say, why am I listening to this part of myself that's not real? Because God would never make you make you feel fearful, but if anything, He'll take the fear away and bring you peace. And that's for a whole nother episode. But I honestly think when it comes to anxiety and fear, is really understanding that emotion and understanding that emotion doesn't have any control over you, but you have control over it. And that's with anything. That's what, we're going to talk more about other mental distresses, depression and stuff like that. But that's really what it comes from. It's just understanding the power that you have within to change it within yourself. And even if you don't believe it, just telling yourself it, just challenging yourself to tell yourself that you are more than a conqueror. You will overcome anything that you put your mind to, even if it takes a long time. But you have to be wanting and willing to recognize that you want to change and have the desire to change. Because if you don't have that desire and that emotion back behind changing and growing for you, then it's going to be like an up and down thing. But having that desire, having that willpower, understanding that God has your back is what's gonna. This honestly will help keep me going. And it also could help keep you going. But you gotta find your why. Again, a lot of this is tied into some previous episodes. But hey, I constantly have to think on that level. So I had to constantly remind myself of it, so I can continuously be balanced and continue building that foundation and learning more. And also, this is just a side note, but I started reading books on Audible, and that's really helped me. Like, just listening to either 10 or 15 minutes of a chapter a day has really helped stimulate my mind for the better. Right now I'm listening to this book called by think it's John Maxwell, I want to say. But it's about, I don't have my phone on me, so but yeah, it's basically the invaluable laws of growth. Something like that. Something like that. If you search that, you'll be able to find it. But yeah, that's really helped me. And even if you don't want to like listen to something, but listening to this podcast helps. But you should always try to have yourself listening, reading, or seeing something that can help your mind and help you get to a better place each day, or just really just to help you keep yourself balanced. Because once you have that in your mind consistently, it's going to become habitual by nature, because that's what you're feeding yourself all the time. So when you do have a situation arise, you don't have to think about how to change your perspective. Your subconscious mind just already does it, and that's like the coolest thing to me. But yeah, like I said, I have grad school coming up, and I don't know what to expect. And I can't lie, like I am low-key nervous. But at the same time, like I know everything's gonna work out, and I know God put me there for a reason. So I think the nervousness is just really excitement. But yeah, but I want to challenge you with something today. After listening to this episode, and if you go through anxiety, or if you see somebody struggling with fearful thoughts, I want you to tell them to do this. Every time you have a fearful thought of what could happen, or just you're overanalyzing, having racing thoughts, you're overgeneralizing, you're not speaking good to yourself, I want you to write that statement down. But after you write that statement down, I want you to write down a positive statement that you can tell yourself about the statement you just wrote to relax. So say if you have a thought, and it's, say if you say, I'm scared that I won't succeed at my new position at work, and you're scared, you're freaking out about it, I want you to write that down. And then I want you to say something similar, like you come up with your own thought. This is an example of what you can say to combat that thought. I know I worked hard to get to this place in my career, and I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. So you have to come up with, works for you. But for me, hearing something like that would help me, like, straighten up my head and say, listen, God has given me a spirit of fear. I gotta snap out of this. I gotta know who I am. And I gotta go back to understanding my why, my purpose. And that's gonna help me, whatever fearful thought that I'm going through, or whatever negative thought that I'm going through. Just challenge yourself to dare to think positive, dare to compliment yourself, have the affirmations towards yourself, and telling you it's gonna change your life, change your thinking, change your life. So yeah, we're gonna end with this quote. Remember, and I also want to really emphasize faith over fear. Even if that's your positive thought to combat negative thinking, faith over fear. Faith over fear. Write it down. Say it to yourself. All the time. Faith over fear. You're gonna get through it. Trust me. And to end off, we're gonna have this quote by Zig Ziglar. He said, "Fear has two meanings: forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. The choice is yours." Choosing to have fearful thoughts is a choice. At one point, it might have subconsciously manifested over time. But now, after being aware of it and knowing that you can change, you have to choose to change. And choosing to change might be hard, it might be challenging, but trust me, you're going to come out stronger, wiser, and rise to who you truly are on the other end. So yeah, take care of yourself. Have a wonderful Wellness Wednesday, and check out the Instagram, check out the website. All of that's going to be in the description below. And just take care of yourself, and interact with me on Instagram and Facebook. If you have any questions about how to overcome these fearful thoughts, or want me to do a part 2, just let me know within the social media, the website, and I look forward to interacting with you guys. So remember, God does give you a spirit of fear, but of peace and a sound mind. Stay blessed and take care.